Hi, I'm Andrew Cooperthwaite, Alpine Product Manager with Head Tyrolia. We're here in the Boulder showroom today to give you some tips on how to base your boot fitting or how to start your boot fitting with your customers and make sure that they have a good experience and come out with a good fit. Today I've got Julia here.
Hello.
As my customer, and we're going to walk through just a couple of things that I like to start the process with. One of the most important factors when you're boot fitting is to introduce yourself and develop a relationship with your customer. So, hi Julia.
Hi Andrew.
I'm Andrew. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
From there, you can really start by asking the customer some important questions that'll help you in guiding them to the right boot and the right type of fit. One of the most important questions I like to ask is, how many days a year do you ski? If somebody says, you know, I ski 1 week a year, then you can go ahead and give them a little bit more room in their boot because they're not going to stress the boot, they're not going to stress the liner quite as much, they're not going to pack out that liner quite as much over the course of the season. If you ask, how many days do you ski, and your response is, I ski 50 to 70 days a year, that's going to register in my mind that she's going to wear this boot quite a bit, she's going to pack that liner down much more, so we're going to want to go ahead and fit you a little bit tighter than I would somebody who only skis a week. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
The other question I always like to ask is, where do you like to ski? Do you like to ski all over the mountain? Do you like to ski particularly on groomed terrain? Do you like to ski in the back bowls, in the bumps, in the trees? The more information that you can get about the consumer, the better you'll do at fitting them to their specific needs. Next step is we want to go ahead and measure the foot. We've got a measuring device here. And Julia, if you can go ahead, let's keep you seated to start out with. That's actually great because the consumer is always going to want to start out by standing up. But I really like to have them start by staying seated. You look at the foot. Important aspect to have here is a ski sock on the foot. Not 2 layers of ski socks, 1 layer of ski sock. It's a great way to create an additional sail for you. So Julia's already in her ski sock. We're going to look at her foot in a seated position and we're going to take a measurement of it. Then I'm going to ask her to stand up and I'm going to look at how that foot changes shape when it's standing versus when it's sitting, or weighted versus unweighted. So we can see that her length has grown and her width has grown. So this gives us a lot of information. A foot that grows significantly when it's weighted is a flexible foot, many times a pronated foot. And that can lead you into the discussion of a custom insole or a trim to fit type insole to help that customer keep a consistent fit within their foot. So now we know the foot shape and the length. We want to go ahead and pull out the proper size boot. And the most important factor when you're looking at the foot relationship to the boot is shell sizing. And I always recommend, some people think it takes too long, it actually reduces the time spent on the floor with the consumer if you shell size, because you gather so much information from shell fitting somebody in a boot. So what we're going to do that shell fitting is we're going to pull the liner out of the shell, just use the shell, and you want to discuss with the consumer what you're going to be doing. So Julia, I'm going to take a look at your foot in the shell, because when your foot's in the liner and the shell, I have no idea on how your foot is fitting in relationship to the shell.
Right.
So this is giving me the information that I need to fit you better.
Okay.
So we're going to slip your right foot down into the shell. And I like to do 3 different views when I'm looking at the foot in the shell. The first view is the length, and what I'll have you do, Julia, is bring your toe so it's just gently touching the toe of the boot, just so you feel a little pressure against your big toe.
Like
Feel like you're there? Okay, then I'm going to have you flex your knee forward, and I'm going to go ahead and reach down and insert 2 fingers behind her heel. And what we're looking for is essentially a 2-finger fit behind the heel. And this is a solid fit for Julia. I can go ahead and just get a snug 2 fingers behind her heel. Go ahead and put your heel all the way to the back of the boot. The next vision that I'm going to look for is the width of the boot. And I'm going to take the boot, spread it open, and I'm going to look right down in to make sure there's a little bit of space on the medial side and the lateral side of her foot. Just a 2 millimeters to 3 millimeters on either side. You don't need much space to account for that liner. Once we've determined that, I like to go ahead and put my hand above her instep, or the throat of the boot. And by doing that, I want to make sure there's at least 2 fingers worth of space above. Go ahead and step your foot out. above this cuneiform bone. This is where all the blood flows through the foot. And this, a lot of times you'll find a bony prominent point right here called the cuneiform bone. Julia doesn't have a very bony one, but a lot of people will, especially people that spend time in ski boots. They sometimes get a little bit of a spur here. So we want to make sure that there's at least 2 fingers worth of space over that instep to allow for the blood flow and so that we're not restricting the foot in that area. So go ahead and step out of there, Julia. So now I've determined that I've got the right shell from a length, width, and what we call vertical volume aspect. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and get the consumer into the boot. Now, Julia, we're going to slip you down into the boot. What I expect you to feel when you first get into the boot is your toe touching the toe of the liner, and that's okay. We want you to feel that. Once we get you to kick your heel back, that toe's going to move away from the toe a little bit of the boot. And then once we buckle the boot up, the toe's going to move even further away from the boot, especially when we flex the knee forward. So this is all part of the process of getting you in the proper fitting boot. Okay. But I do expect you to feel that. So we're going to go ahead and slip you down into the boot. Now you should feel your toe touching the liner.
Yes, I do.
Let's pick up that boot, kick the heel back. Always the best thing you can do when you first put your boot on, whether you're fitting the boot or you're doing it with your own boots personally. Go ahead and kick that heel back. That pulls the heel back into the heel pocket and brings the toe away from the toe of the boot. Gets you in the optimal position to start the day. I always like to start buckling from the top down. And we can go ahead, we'll adjust the macro ratchet here to the medium setting for Julia. You can use that double power lever that's found on this Adapt Edge boot, very easy. Always want to show your customers the specific fit features that the boots have. You want to buckle and close the boot in a sure fashion, but not overly tight. Now we're going to have you flex the knee forward, Julia. And when you flex the knee forward, you should feel your heel move back and the toe move away from the front. Exactly. And those are all ideal things that the consumer should feel when you're fitting the boot. Some of the areas that you want to talk to them about is the heel pocket in particular. When you flex the knee forward, is that heel lifting up? Remember, the boot is only going to get bigger, and you want to convey that to the consumer, that we want the boot to feel snug, like a firm handshake when we're starting out with the fit. Because that boot's going to get bigger, if we start out with a boot that's sloppy or feels loose to begin with, it's only going to get looser and looser. So we want to make sure we have that nice snug fit, firm handshake around the foot, feel like we're grabbing the heel and the Achilles tendon without causing pain, but with holding the heel down. Does it feel like the heel's lifting up when you're flexing the knee forward?
No.
Okay. And then we should also feel like your forefoot is able to sit flat in the boot. It has, you feel contact around the forefoot, but we're not crushing the forefoot. We're not changing the shape of your foot.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yep.
And then when you flex the knee forward, you have a little wiggle room in the toes.
Just a little bit.
Great. Those are all aspects that we're looking for in the boot fit. From this point on, you can use, in relation to head, the adaptive fit mechanism. You can go ahead and do your heat fitting, whether it's the Thermo heat fit liner or the Perfect Fit liner, and those will all help you to get the consumer even in a more comfortable fit. But these are just the basics that you can go through the consumer with. These are all things that you should do with every boot fit that you do. When you're a boot fitter, you should be thinking about repetition, always doing the same process with every customer that comes in. Boot fitting is all about experience. So the more experience that you gain, the more consistent that you are with every consumer, the better boot fitter you'll become.